Welcome everyone to today's legal and financial presentation. This is our final presentation. We have had a wonderful 2 weeks and this is our third and final presentation. My name is Ariel Green and I am the Caregiver Support Specialist for Care Partners. And I'm joined today by our sponsor from AARP, Shalonda Smith, and she is going to do a brief introduction and then introduce our speaker for today. So thank you again for joining us. If this is your first time attending, we have recorded all of the presentations and we will share them all with you. If this is your third time attending, thank you so much for being here and I hope you've enjoyed all of the presentations. So I'm going to turn it over to Shalonda so that she can give you a little bit more information about AARP as well as our speaker for today. So thank you all so much. And thank you, Shalonda.
Thank you, Ariel. It's really been a joy. I've enjoyed myself. Like Ariel said, my name is Shalonda Smith and I'm an AARP volunteer. My first volunteer series event, and it's been amazing to me. Just learned so many just jewels that's been provided on in this series. And as Ariel said, this was part of a 3-part legal and financial series caregiver webinar, and this is the final installment. So yes, we appreciate everyone that's already attended. And even if this is your first time, you're definitely in for a treat. As you may know, AARP is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization with a membership for people age 50 and older. There are nearly 38 million members nationally, 2.3 million in Texas, and about 400,000 AARP members living in Houston. You may find information about other upcoming events and volunteer opportunities on the AARP website at aarp.org/TX. All right, so we're excited, and I'm excited to welcome our speaker this afternoon. Her name is Angela Odinsky. She is a certified elder law attorney in Houston, Texas. She will be talking about crisis planning. Ms. Odinsky is a native Texan. She received her BA from Southwestern University, Georgetown. Her MA from Rayford University, Rayford, Virginia. Her JD from the University of Houston Law Center, and CELA through the National Elder Law Foundation. Angela's licensed to practice in Texas and in Washington. Angela's focus is estate planning, probate, elder law, and special needs planning. Angela is a regular speaker and presenter on topics of estate planning and elder law in a variety of, and I believe it's Care Partners and a variety of other caregiver groups. She's currently serving on the Unauthorized Practice of Law Committee of the Texas State Bar and is an active member of the Texas and Washington chapters of the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys and the Texas Bar College. So let's welcome Angela.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This has been an incredible series. It's been so much fun being here. I always enjoy working with Ariel and working with Care Partners and any number of groups. Education, I think, is one of the most important things that we can do as attorneys, especially with in this population, and in helping this group of people, elders, and figuring out long-term care and what are our next steps and how do we manage these circumstances. And so today we are going to be talking about crisis. What happens when you're in crisis? The first day we talked about your essential documents, what you needed, how you had to have how it was best to have everything set up, people that you needed in your life to manage things for you, and how to get that, how to get all that documentation together. The second part of this series was about pre-planning for your long-term care. If you don't know exactly what your long-term care is going to look like, taking a few moments to think about what you want, how you want to do it, and how you intend to pay for it, how you intend to afford the life that you want as you age. We talked a lot about thinking ahead and what you can do to prepare yourself and get yourself in the best possible position in terms of looking at your home and any modifications that might need to be done. What can you do to make yourself safer in terms of fall prevention and just keeping yourself aging in place in your home for as long as possible. Today, we're going to the next step. Today, we're talking about what happens when you can't stay home. And we have to do something else for our long-term care. So if you'll just give me 1 second, I am going to share my screen with you. And you should see my presentation up here. I never know, I have 2 monitors, and so I never know which one you're going to see. Sometimes you see 2 slides, you'll see what's coming up next. Sometimes you'll see 1. Either way is fine. If you see 2 slides, sometimes you'll see my notes too, which might be helpful. So I am Angela Odinsky with the Law Office of Angela Odinsky. I am a certified elder law attorney, which means that I have additional practice experience, education, and I have taken a test to certify that I do have experience in helping elders manage long-term care and their families. So first off, let's talk a little bit about what we're talking about when we say long-term care. It's not just medical, it also includes personal care needs, bathing, dressing, eating, moving from one room to another, housework, shopping, caring for pets, taking medication. All of these things comes into when we talk about long-term care. Last week, we talked a little bit about your activities of daily living, your ADLs. Well, long-term care really approaches those ADLs in terms of, how many of those ADLs can you do? How many of those ADLs are you struggling with? That's what's going to determine whether long-term care is needed and what kind of long-term care you might be eligible for. So sometimes private caretakers are enough. There are home healthcare businesses that offer a variety of services, from companion care, someone to just come and hang out and chat, and do some light laundry, maybe a little bit of assistance with cooking meals, all the way up to actual skilled nursing, having a nurse there to ensure that your medications are correct and that you are being taken care of exactly the way that you need to be. And there's any number of levels of care in between. It's important that we start with only what's needed, not to break the bank, because the whole point here, of course, last time it was about goals, right? So it's about aging with dignity, and it's about meeting the goals and the standards that you want for your long-term care. When you're using private caretakers, home healthcare businesses, it gives unpaid caregivers, your family and friends, much needed breaks. We talked last time about the health impacts to caregivers, especially family caregivers, spouses in particular, and how much that they need some respite sometimes. And getting help 10% of the time can often help keep us independent 90% of the time. I know that there's a resistance from a lot of family members, clients, parents about not wanting somebody in their house. And I appreciate that. But allowing that person in for a small amount of time can extend the amount of time that you can maintain the rest of your independence in a lot of cases. And sometimes housing modifications can make it easier to age in place. So let's talk a little bit about Medicare first. So we're going to talk about the differences between Medicare and Medicaid, because I have definitely talked to people who think that Medicare has a place in their long-term care, and it doesn't, not really. There are some limited benefits, which we're going to talk about, but I want to make these distinctions because for some reason, somebody thought it would be a good idea to name these 2 programs almost identical when they are in no way identical programs. Yes, they are medical benefits, but that is where the similarities end. And a lot of people confuse Medicare and Medicaid. Even other attorneys, people that don't practice in this area, they often don't know the difference between Medicare and Medicaid. And so it's really important to kind of think about where those lines are drawn. And the fact that you can receive both Medicare and Medicaid. You can be a dual recipient of these benefits. So let's talk about your Medicare benefits. So first off, Medicare is a government-funded health insurance program that you're entitled to the day you turn 65. And it's just like Blue Cross Blue Shield, right? You choose your doctors, you choose your prescription plans, you choose the plan that you want and how you want it managed. It does not cover personal needs, cooking, cleaning, shopping, etc. Medicare is not going to cover those needs. However, Sometimes with a doctor's prescription, Medicare can cover things like having somebody come out to help with bathing. Now that's all that they do. They come out once or twice a week to help with things like bathing, and then they're gone. So they're not there to do light housework or cooking or cleaning or anything else. And Medicare benefits do not cover long-term skilled nursing. Okay, and so that's really what we're talking about now, is we're talking about skilled nursing care and how are we paying for it, because it is quite expensive. I believe the numbers from last week's showed that long-term care costs in Houston were about $93,000 a year for private pay. And I mean, honestly, who can pay that? That is insane. So what does Medicare pay for, right? So we need to kind of keep in mind what Medicare pays for. So it does pay for short stays and rehabilitation. So you might be in a skilled nursing facility that Medicare is paid for, but it's because you had a recent hospital stay of at least 3 days where you were admitted and not under observation. That admittance requirement has been waived during COVID. When the emergency orders are lifted, then most likely we will go back to that 3-day requirement. I just kind of want to make that distinction as well. So if you got a prior hospital stay where you were admitted for at least 3 days and you come out and you need rehabilitation, then you can be admitted into a Medicare certified nursing facility within 30 days of that prior hospital stay so that you can receive physical therapy, occupational therapy, skilled nursing, whatever it is that's going to be needed to get you back up and running. The whole point of this is rehabilitation. Okay, it's not for you to stay forever. It's just for you to get the care that you need to get back to where you were. So how much of this does Medicare cover? Well, it covers some of the costs for up to 100 days. Okay, so there's a day limit on the Medicare rehabilitation. First off, from day 1 to day 20, Medicare will cover 100%. From day 21 to day 100, the patient is responsible for $194.50 a day. That's the copayment that's required between day 21 and day 100 when you're in rehabilitation. Medicare covers part of it, but there's a copayment for the rest of it. Now, if you have some Medicare supplements cover that $194.50 per day. So sometimes it will depend on what your Medicare program is and what kind of supplement you might have. If you have just traditional Medicare with no supplement, then you'll be responsible for that co-insurance. If you have traditional Medicare and you have additional supplements that will cover that rehabilitation stay, then it can cover that up to day 100. Day 101 and beyond, the patient's responsible 100%. Medicare stops covering any skilled nursing at that point. All right, so what are we talking about when we say crisis planning? We're talking about an unexpected, unplanned need for long-term medical care, or unexpected, unplanned need for personal care in several areas. So you need assistance with multiple areas of activities of daily living, right? I told you that that term was going to be important, and it really is in long-term care. Your ADLs, that's the abbreviation. Your ADLs are everything in long-term care. And it requires, in this idea of crisis planning, it's going to require some kind of assistance to pay for that unexpected care. All right, so Medicaid long-term care. I want to be very specific here. As I mentioned last week, and I believe the week before, Medicaid is a lot of different programs. So Medicaid is a federal benefit program that's administered by the states. There are tons of smaller programs within Medicaid that pay for different things. There's children's Medicaid, there's pregnant women's Medicaid, there's Medicaid for certain kinds of disabilities, there's Medicaid for certain kinds of cancers. There are Medicaid benefits that cover different things, have different requirements. They have different qualifications. It's all dependent on what you're looking for. This presentation, everything that I talk about is solely focused on Medicaid long-term care benefits, period. And we're only focused on the state of Texas because each state's going to be different. Each state has different benefits, different things that they pay for, and different qualifications. So if you are watching from another state, or you are watching for a loved one who lives in another state, there's nothing that I'm going to say today that is in any way going to be applicable to that other state. So that's kind of a threshold issue before we really get started into this, is that when I'm talking about Medicaid, I'm talking about long-term care benefits only, and I'm talking about long-term care benefits in Texas. So Medicaid pays for the single largest share of long-term care in the country, period. That's our social safety net when it comes to long-term care, when it comes to care and aging. Medicaid is the single largest payer. But you have to meet the state eligibility requirements depending on what state you're in. We're going to talk about Texas. So what does Medicaid pay for? Well, Medicaid pays for skilled nursing. That is the number one thing it pays for here in Texas. There are waiver programs that can pay for home health care or assisted living, but there are wait lists for those. And you have to find providers, either home health or assisted living providers, that accept the Medicaid program, that accept payment from them. And then there might be other supports and services depending on need. So let's talk about why we qualify for Medicaid. Like, why are we trying to qualify for Medicaid? We're going to do a little bit of a case study, which I've never really done before because I don't want to confuse the issue, but I want to make it clear how complicated these kinds of situations are, but how there are rules in place to help people become qualified while not impoverishing your spouse. So a husband and wife have $200,000 in savings, and we're just assuming these are cash savings, right? Because that's the easiest that I can work with. Every type of asset is going to have a different type of treatment. Okay, so we're dealing with cash assets right here. They have a home worth $300,000. The husband receives $2,600 in Social Security, and the wife receives $1,800. The husband has a stroke and needs nursing care that would cost privately $8,500 a month. If they did nothing, then they would eat up their savings within 3 years. It goes real fast. So that's why we're going to qualify, right? We're going to qualify so that we make sure that our spouse at home has some money so they can live as well. So we're going to talk about what it means to qualify for skilled nursing Medicaid or Medicaid long-term care. There's two criteria you have to meet. You have to meet the non-financial criteria, and you have to meet the financial criteria. The non-financial qualifications, you have to be over 65 years old, blind or disabled. And when we say disabled, we mean the Social Security Administration's definition of disabled. A US citizen or qualified alien. You have to be a Texas resident, and you have to meet medical necessity. Medical necessity sometimes that's an easy answer. If somebody has advanced dementia and they don't know who they are and they need help with their medication management, even if they're otherwise healthy, but they can't take their medications on their own because they won't remember, then that's a need for medical necessity. If it's not a dementia situation, then they have to demonstrate a medical condition that is of sufficient seriousness that they need routine care given by a skilled professional. A lot of these definitions are somewhat opaque, and we do the best we can in explaining them and kind of working through helping families. When I say we, I mean elder law attorneys, geriatric care managers, anybody who works in sort of the elder social sphere. We do the best we can with the definitions that we're given. So you have to meet medical necessity. Like I said, sometimes it's an easy question, sometimes it's a harder question. Financial qualifications. So there are different requirements for individuals, for single people who are not married, and married couples. So your income limit for an individual applying cannot be more than $2,523 gross per month. When I say gross, that means that we're not looking at the number that is deposited into your bank account. We're looking at the number that is before your Medicare premium comes out, before anything else comes out. So we're looking at gross numbers. So in 2022, these numbers change every year. So when you come back and look at this next year, these numbers are all going to be different. So the income limit for an individual applicant is $2,523. If both spouses need to apply for Medicaid at the same time, then the income for both spouses is double, $5,046. Your countable asset limit, meaning the amount of assets you are entitled to have in your possession in order to qualify, is $2,000. That number has remained unchanged since 1989. In 1989, Congress determined that $2,000 was enough in assets for you to qualify for benefits, and nobody has increased that amount since then. Countable asset is the key phrase. There are countable and non-countable assets, which we'll get to in just a minute. The countable asset limit for both spouses, if both spouses are applying, is $3,000. That's how much two spouses together who both need skilled nursing care and are both applying for Medicaid at the same time, that's how much in assets that they're entitled to keep in their name, is $3,000 countable assets. If only one spouse, and this is why this is so, it does get a little bit complicated. If you are a married couple, one spouse is well and at home and is not applying for Medicaid, and the other spouse is applying for Medicaid, the applicant is entitled to $2,000, and the non-applicant spouse is entitled to keep up to $137,400. And again, that amount changes every year. And the spousal needs allowance, which is how much in income the spouse at home gets to keep, is $3,435. These are this year's numbers. All right, so countable versus non-countable assets. Everything comes down to what's countable versus non-countable. When it comes to, these are examples. So a countable asset is going to be anything that you can turn into cash quickly, right? So it's cash in your checking savings account, property that is not the home that can be sold, and it's not currently up for sale, mineral rights that are produced, that are leased and producing, right? There's a whole bunch of rules about how we value mineral rights, but that would be a countable asset. A non-countable asset is your homestead up to $636,000 in equity, one vehicle, irrevocable pre-need funeral contract with specific terms on it. Any real estate that's up for sale is considered a non-countable asset. Certain business properties are considered non-countable, and certain livestock on a working farm and other farm equipment are considered non-countable. Now, how we get those designations is very specific. These are just examples. People have all kinds of interesting assets, and we have to figure out which are countable versus which are non-countable. I don't mean to make this, I think I was telling Shalonda before we all started all of this, people like to think that attorneys overcomplicate things. I'm not overcomplicating it. This is that complicated. And so this is kind of just examples of how all of this works. So when do you apply for Medicaid? You have to be in a Medicaid bed for 30 days, or your name has to come up on the Star Plus waiver interest list. I get calls all the time from people who tell me that their loved one needs help and they need care. And so they applied for Medicaid and were denied. And they didn't know why they were denied. It's because they're applying for Medicaid long-term care, but they're not in a Medicaid facility in a Medicaid designated bed, and they haven't been for 30 days. Or they never put their names up on the Star Plus waiver interest list. They're just applying because they need help, and Medicaid is supposed to help with long-term care. But there are criteria that have to be met in terms of when you apply. So if you need help immediately, then your best option, if you meet medical necessity, is to find a skilled nursing facility that has Medicaid beds available and be in a Medicaid dedicated bed for 30 days. And then you can apply. If you have a little bit of time, then you put your name on the Star Plus waiver interest list, like we talked about last week. Put your name on the Star Plus waiver interest list, and when your name comes up, then you're in the period of time in which you can make the application. You must meet all the qualifying criteria by 12/01 on the first day of the month of the application. Timing matters. Everything in Medicaid is about the timing of when things are done. If you're trying to do this sort of crisis planning, if you need to get this done immediately and there's any hiccups in the road, then timing is everything. All right, so we're going to do a crisis planning case study. This is the first time I've ever done this because I feel like it confuses the matter, but I want to give you sort of an example of what we walk through, like the kinds of considerations that we walk through when we're trying to figure out how a qualification is going to work in a spousal situation. So this is really specific to spouses. So we're going back to that why we qualify for Medicaid slide, where we say a husband and wife have $200,000 in savings. Now this example assumes cash assets. Different type of assets will require different planning depending on the circumstances. So nothing I say is going to apply to anything that's not a cash asset. The home is worth $300,000. So we're underneath our $636,000. There's spouses, there's plenty of equity. We're not worried about the house. Husband receives $2,600 in Social Security, which is just a little bit over that income limit of $2,523. And the wife receives $1,800 in Social Security. All right, so let's talk about this. What do we need to deal with first? Well, the husband and wife, $200,000 in savings is a countable asset. It's a cash asset, it's countable. The home, worth $300,000, is non-countable asset. So we don't have to worry about that counting against them in terms of assets. The husband receives that $2,600. It's going to be countable as to him. The wife receives $1,800, but only income of the applicant is countable. So income and assets are treated differently. The checks coming to you in your name every month is your income. Income is only counted as for the applicant. The spouse that's staying at home, their income belongs to them. Medicaid is not going to make them give up their income. Okay, they get to use their income to live off of. So assets count together, income counts separately. Okay, so we have $200,000 in savings, which is countable. And we have this $2,600 in Social Security gross, which is, again, just a little bit over that hard line of $2,523. So how do we approach this? Well, first off, husband and wife's assets are going to be split in half. Okay. Now, how much gets split in half? Timing is everything. That is determined as of 12:01 a.m. on the first day of the month in which the first continuous period of institutionalization lasting more than 30 days began. That is a phrase that is directly out of the rules. And then institutionalization has a very specific meaning. So it doesn't mean memory care. It doesn't mean assisted living, right? And so they can't have been in a private pay memory care for a year. You can't go back a year and say, what was the bank account a year ago from this private pay memory care? Because that's not what they mean by institutionalization. Okay, so when we're dealing with spouses, there's a date at which we look at the accounts and we say, this is how much is in the account, and we're going to split it in half. It's called the snapshot date. So we take this and we split it in half. So 100,000 is going to be attributed to the husband and 100,000 is going to be attributed to the wife. And the husband is still receiving his $2,600 Social Security. So we're not going to have to worry about that $100,000 attributed to the wife because she's entitled to keep up to 137. So she doesn't need to do anything with her part. Now, we can't take any from him and give it to her to get her up to 137 because that's not how it works. You split it in half. We're not transferring to save more at this point in time. We don't have the ability to do that. There's nothing in the rules that allows us to do that. If they have other circumstances, there might be things in the rules that will allow us to expand how much she can keep, but not on these facts. We don't have that here. Okay, so she gets to keep her 100,000. Now we have to figure out, and he is entitled to keep 2,000. So we have to create some kind of qualifying plan for the husband to deal with that $98,000. What that qualifying plan is going to be dependent on what the circumstances are. I couldn't tell you what that qualifying plan is going to look like. There are so many different ways we can approach this that it's not helpful to just start listing them. And so the husband receives $2,600, which is more than the $2,523. So we're going to have to deal with this $98,000 with some kind of plan. And then we're going to have to deal with his gross income. So we're going to create this qualifying plan to reduce the husband's assets by $98,000. But we're not going to actually have to do anything about the husband's income because the husband's entitled to $60 allowance, making his countable income $2,540, which is still over $2,523, but the spouse at home is entitled to a monthly allowance of $3,435. So we can basically take from his and add to hers to create, to get her up to that 3,433 or 35. And so then the husband's only income that he's having to deal with is this $905, which would be his copayment to the facility. So we don't actually have to do any additional planning because we have that spouse at home that's entitled to have additional income. All right, so now we're going to talk just a minute about myths. I heard this the other day, and it's one of those things I hear all the time. I can give up to $16,000 a year away and then qualify for Medicaid. No, you cannot. Giving your stuff away as an uncompensated transfer can result in a penalty. That $16,000 rule for gifting only counts for the IRS. That's an IRS rule. That's not a Medicaid rule. Rules dealing with the IRS have nothing to do with Medicaid. They're completely different. This one I've dealt with personally and had to manage it in a application once. I only have to report the assets in my sick spouse's name. So I only have to report the assets that are in the name of my spouse that's going into the skilled nursing facility. No, assets are counted all together. I don't care if you have a prenuptial agreement. I don't care if you have a marital agreement of some kind that separated your assets. I don't care if you inherited $10 million from your family that is yours in a separate in a separate account. All the assets of a couple are counted together. The idea of community and separate property is a concept in family law. Concepts in family law have nothing to do with Medicaid. Like IRS has nothing to do with Medicaid. Concepts in family law have nothing to do with Medicaid. So all assets have to be reported. And if you inherited $10 million, then hopefully we're not looking at Medicaid as a benefit. A well spouse must completely impoverish themselves for their sick spouse to qualify. So this is the other end of the spectrum. Somebody so terrified of even attempting to qualify because they think they're going to have to get rid of everything. No, there are rules in place. They're actually called, spousal impoverishment rules, because we are trying to avoid impoverishing the spouse at home. There are a lot of ways that we can help a spouse at home to be able to manage and keep funds for their living, for their existence. And if my spouse applies for Medicaid, the state will take my house. Not in Texas. In Texas, there's no estate recovery if there's a living spouse. So if you outlive your spouse, no one's going to take your house. Plus, we do have ways to avoid Medicaid estate recovery. So it's not an automatic that something's going to happen to your house if you or your spouse needs Medicaid. We can plan around that. So planning for a single person, that is far more challenging. There are fewer opportunities for planning. We can still do it. We can still look through everything and see what can be done for somebody who does not have a spouse. But they are fewer. Everything is going to depend on the type of assets that you have, and if there is a way to convert these sort of countable assets into non-countable assets. And if your income is over the limit as a single person, that's where you're going to use something called a qualified income trust or a Miller trust. I know a lot of people have heard the term Miller trust. A Miller trust is income only. It does not hold any assets. It does not help anybody qualify for Medicaid if they are not otherwise qualified in their assets. It's just there to hold funds for purposes of income, because that income limit is $2,523. So say your income is $3,000. Well, if your income is $3,000, you don't really have anything in assets, but the skilled nursing facility is $8,500, then that $5,500 gap has to be met somewhere, right? And so that's what we use a Miller trust for. It's a very specialized kind of trust, very specific language. It has to be managed in a very specific way. There are a lot of rules that you have to be aware of when you're dealing with a Miller trust, but it can alleviate the concerns for somebody who has high income and low assets, but not high enough income to pay for a skilled nursing facility. Common terms you're going to have heard: Miller trust, we just talked about, income only trust. Spin down. I'm going to spin down in order to get on Medicaid. A Medicaid spin down plan could be the right solution. Absolutely. It may not be the right solution. It takes many forms. There's all kinds of different ways that you can do a spin down plan. You may have heard of Medicaid annuities. All of these things should only be used as part of a greater comprehensive plan. If you are trying to qualify for Medicaid, if you are trying to put a plan together to qualify for Medicaid, then it should be a comprehensive overall plan. The internet is not your friend. Your cousin's neighbor's daughter's uncle is not a good resource, right? There is a reason why only attorneys are allowed to do this kind of planning in Texas, because it is complicated. And it's very easy to take the wrong step inadvertently, to think that you've done the right thing, but then it actually end up being a disqualifying thing, right? So it's really important if you are trying to qualify, that you reach out to somebody and you don't already otherwise qualify, right? I mean, I definitely talk to people that otherwise they already qualify. They call me and they're just terrified, and they give me their circumstances, and everything in their circumstances tells me that they meet all the qualifications. And so I let them know, from what you've told me, you meet the qualifications. And so, it's only when we're trying to deal with excess assets and excess income that it really helps to talk to somebody who knows how to do this kind of planning. So gather your team, people you're going to need, your financial advisor, your accountant. When it comes to filing an application, even if you hire an attorney to help you get all of this done, there's still going to be a lot of work that you're going to have to do. We have to have bank records. We have to have deeds. If anything has been sold in the last 5 years, we have to have the sales records of those things, like especially a house. Like if you sold a house in the last 5 years, we need to see it. We need to see where the money went. We have to have a money trail. We have to know where everything has gone. All cash has come in and all cash has gone out. And it requires a lot of documentation sometimes to put these applications together. If there's anything unusual at all, then we have to work to make sure that we have everything that they're going to need, and that we give it to them in the manner that they are going to most easily accept it. Pro tip: when you are submitting bank records, oftentimes the back page of the bank records has a bunch of just like notices from the bank on it. And so a lot of people will just submit the bank records, the numbers, right, that has the money coming in, the money going out. And they don't submit those back pages that have a bunch of notice requirements from the bank that doesn't have anything to do with their account. Problem is, at the top of that bank record, it says page 1 of 4. And when Texas Health and Human Services gets page 1 and 3, but they don't get page 2 and 4 because you looked at it and said, well, this is irrelevant, they don't need it, they're going to come back and say, well, we need your bank records. And you're going to say, but I sent you my bank records. And by the time you go back and forth, someone's pulling their hair out. And it all comes down to they want to see all 4 pages. Because just because you've looked at it and said this is irrelevant, they need to see it so that they can say that it's irrelevant, right? It may sound like it comes from personal experience, and it does. I didn't realize a client was submitting bank records without all of the pages. And so I kept calling when they kept asking for more bank records. And they're like, we need the bank records. But we sent you the bank records. Until finally I did it myself. And it's like, oh, I see what the issue is. So like I said, pro tip, if you're doing an application, don't assume that any one sheet of paper is the irrelevant part in a bank record. Just give them the whole thing. Have your attorney ready. Talk to them. Have a care manager. Care managers are wonderful. Geriatric care managers are exceptionally valuable team members when it comes to determining the level of long-term care your loved one might need. They can come in, do a home assessment, and let you know what difficulties or hazards they see that might need modification. A geriatric care manager can come in and help with the medical necessity assessment for STAR Plus waiver programs. They can kind of walk you through what to expect and maybe help when the caseworker comes, maybe help answer questions about what's going to be needed and what level of care is really needed. Care managers are wonderful resources. And finally, every client's situation is going to be unique. Crisis Medicaid planning can extend the life of your retirement. It can help pay for care. It can help maintain you and your spouse's quality of life. Pre-planning is going to always do better for you, but sometimes we just don't get around to it. And only an attorney can charge a fee for Medicaid planning. So if you're going someplace for Medicaid planning and they're charging a fee, it has to be an attorney. It can't just be some random Medicaid planning consulting firm, right? There has to be an attorney attached because this is complicated and everything comes down to the Texas Administrative Code. All right. So this is me. There's my information. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer questions now as well. I know that it's
right there?
Difficult. Yeah, this is going to be a challenging one. So I have a question here. What if there's no spouse and the applicant lives alone when it comes to estate recovery? So while there are a lot of exceptions to estate recovery, in this example, there aren't any. And so if you want to avoid estate recovery, in this case, your best option is going to be
She's volunteering to AARP her time to do this.
Sorry.
And of course, what she hopes is that's advertising for her. Yes, me too.
I'm
That's
sorry. I don't know if you're addressing the group or if this is a side conversation, but if you are talking to the group, please share. If you're not, please mute yourself.
So in this case, for when it comes to estate recovery, then it would your best bet would be to have something called a ladybird deed or an enhanced life estate deed or a transfer on death deed, some way to pass your house outside of probate to your beneficiaries. So can I explain the Star Plus waiver program again, and how long does the waitlist typically take? Okay, Star Plus waiver is part of the Medicaid program, includes this waiver aspect. And so what you're doing is you're saying that you need skilled nursing. You meet all the criteria for skilled nursing, but you're going to waive your right to skilled nursing and instead you would like to accept home-based community services. Now, that is the wait list right now in Harris County is a little over a year. The timing on the wait list depends on how well it's funded. Sometimes they fund it in a session of Congress and then there's no wait at all. And sometimes they don't fund it for a while and the wait list grows. In the first several months of COVID, they stopped it altogether. They stopped putting people on the wait list at all. Or they stopped taking people off the wait list and actually like getting them home health care. So it fluctuates as far as like how long. But what happens is you get on the wait list, you give them your name, your social security number, and a good way to contact you. If that contact information changes, you call them and you tell them that it changed. They need a telephone number and an address. Because when your name comes up on the list, they will contact you and you have a certain amount of time to get back to them to accept. And if you don't get back to them in that amount of time, they will drop your name from the list and they will go to the next person. So the contact information that you give them needs to be accurate. And if you don't have access necessarily to your phone or to mail, if you're not checking it all the time, but you have a loved one, an adult child who's assisting you, then give them their contact information. But it is crucial that they have up-to-date contact information when you're on the Star Plus waiver interest list. When your name comes up on the list, they will send you a letter and they will let you know. And then they will schedule a time for a caseworker to come to your home and do an assessment. And so this is where they determine whether or not you meet medical necessity. When they come in, it is important that you, your loved one, whoever is applying for the STAR Plus waiver, it's important that you not overstate the abilities of the person. Answer all the questions, assuming they were home by themselves without any help at all. From a dignity perspective, we tend to want to overstate what our abilities are. But when it comes to getting help, we need to be very honest. We need to be very honest about what we are capable of doing. I have had a client that has the STAR Plus waiver. He receives home health care. He receives about 60 hours a week. That is significant. He's able to stay home, and he will be able to stay home indefinitely because of that. Now, he had to go through the waiting period. He had to do everything, but it did allow him to have a significant amount of care. The amount of care you get may not be 60 hours a week. It might be 30, right? The amount of care that you get is going to be based on that assessment. And so that's why I say you have to be very honest in what you are able to do left to your own devices at home by yourself, and what your challenges are. It's crucial to be very clear with your caseworker when they come to do the medical necessity. And then they'll let you know if you meet medical necessity, and you'll have a certain amount of time to file the application. And so before you file the application, that's when you take care of doing whatever your plan is, making sure that you have, making sure that you're going to meet those financial requirements. And so if you are working with an elder law attorney with the STAR Plus waiver, as soon as you get that date for when your application's in, like as soon as you get the letters, then you need to contact them, because y'all got to start getting stuff together. We have a much shortened timeline for getting this application, and so you have to have those documents. You have to have everything ready to go for that application. Okay, let's see where we're at here. I define the institutionalization term. Generally, we're talking about a Medicaid certified place. So we are not usually talking about memory care or assisted living. We're talking about hospitals, skilled nursing facilities, rehabilitation, so that snapshot date for institutionalization is very specifically a medical institution. I have called some places before trying to assist spouses where they've been in memory care for over a year, and I'm like, do you happen to have any Medicaid qualified or Medicaid beds? And they're like, nope. And if they don't, then it's not an institution per the definition of the Texas Health and Human Services. So I can't go all the way back a year to create that snapshot date from a year ago, right? So institutionalization is very specific, and it's not always clear what place is going to count and what isn't. Hospital, skilled nursing, rehab, those generally are going to count. Anything outside of that, it's questionable. Can you pass your house to the beneficiary after or while applying? So the great thing about a ladybird deed or a transfer on death deed is you're not passing the house to them until you die. You're not transferring anything right now. That's what makes it work. You're not transferring a present interest. You are transferring an interest that is not going to be realized until after you die. And so if you are needing Medicaid or want Medicaid, then you can go ahead and do a ladybird deed or transfer on death deed now. I do them as part of my estate planning because they're like beneficiary designations for your house. You can avoid probate. I mean, they're they're good probate avoidance as much as anything else. And so it's helpful to you can go ahead and do it now if you're already in a facility, if someone's already in a facility. Now, when it comes to using your agent under a power of attorney, if that power of attorney document does not have specific language allowing for the ladybird deed, then that could be more challenging to be able to get it done. But if you're able to do it yourself, you can do it now, you can do it later. It doesn't matter so much because it's not considered a transfer. So if someone's in the hospital right now with a stroke, the services available to that person depends on their income. Their husband passed away last year. This person is now dealing with other family members dealing with their care. Not quite sure what the question is here. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm glad that you enjoyed the presentation. The services available are going to be dependent on both assets and income. And if somebody is currently in the hospital and they are relying on family for care, then they are hopefully there is some kind of, or they're relying on a family to do decision and take care of things. Hopefully there's a durable power of attorney in place. That's we have a lot of complexity in that statement that I'm not quite sure where the question is or what it is that you're asking.
What I'm asking, this is Karen that wrote the question. What I'm asking is, she's currently in the hospital. She just went in this week. Her daughter is dealing with a lot of it, but she's unsure of where this all is going because she's out of state. So she's dealing with a mom that's here in Texas and trying to get the care that she needs now that she's had this stroke and she lived by herself.
Right. So it's probably going to be in the daughter's best interest to reach out to somebody, an elder law attorney, the social worker at the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Hospital social workers can be such an incredibly good resource in terms of what next steps are going to have to happen and where they are. It is very difficult trying to manage the situation from a different state. There are a lot of people in that kind of circumstance. It is crucial that there are powers of attorney in place. If there aren't, I honestly don't know what all the daughter is going to be able to accomplish from where she is. And so she's in a difficult position. She needs to contact somebody, whether it be the social worker at the hospital, contacting an elder law attorney, contacting somebody to kind of help her walk through next steps and give resources, because we don't necessarily know what mom's next step is going to look like.
Correct. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. Deborah White, you have your hand up. Did you have a question? You're muted if you do. You can unmute and ask the question. Okay, well, we'll keep going. Oh, there you are.
I'm sorry. Yes, I was trying to figure out how to get unmuted. I have a question about the Medicaid star something waiver. In the last session, when they were talking about that, they were recommending that you go ahead and get on that list as soon as possible. And then if your name comes up and you're not ready, you tell them just to keep you on the list. But it didn't seem like that's what you were saying. Seems like you were saying that you need to be ready. So
No,
I'm a little
get your name on the
confused.
list. When your name comes up on the list, that's when you need to be ready for when your name comes up on the list. Go ahead and get your name on the list, because it's a year-long wait list. If you don't get your name on the list in a year, your name ain't going to come up, right? You have to get your name on the list first.
But
You don't have to be qualified yet. You just have to have your name on the list. When your name comes up, that's when qualification matters.
But what if you're not qualified then? Because it's very difficult to plan ahead when
if you're not qualified, then you just say, I'm not ready, keep me on the list.
that's what my question, that was what I was asking. It sounds like you were saying
Yes.
that, you got to be qualified then or forget it, right? But yeah, so thank you for clarifying that.
Sure. Yeah. If you're ready, if you are qualified, then yes, we have to act fast and get you to get the benefits. If you're not qualified, then you just say, I'm not ready, and you move on.
Okay, great. And
And then
keep
your
me
name
on
will
the
come up
list.
again. Right. Just be on the
Yeah.
list and stay on the list for when you need it.
Yes, that's what I want. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. My mother's a widow and now a resident in Texas and has 2 properties in Louisiana. One is her sole property. The other, she has joint ownership because half went to the heirs. She's also a single premium life insurance policy. Will this affect her qualify for Medicaid? Yes, those are assets. Now the asset that is her sole property in Louisiana is considered just considered her property, right? And so when we were talking about what a countable asset is, that includes property. Now, the property that she has with the other heirs may not, because if she can't sell it on her own, then she doesn't really have an option. And so that's a little bit more of a questionable one, but the one that's her sole property, that is absolutely going to be a countable asset that will potentially be disqualifying if it's worth more than $2,000, right? As far as her single premium life insurance policy, it depends. It depends on the face value. It depends on the cash value. When it comes to assets like IRAs, annuities, life insurance policies, all of those things, those contracts have to be submitted and reviewed to determine what kind of asset they are and whether they're going to count. This is why I say that every asset's going to be treated differently. It depends on what it is. And so if you are wanting to achieve Medicaid qualification, if you are wanting to qualify for Medicaid, then you are definitely going to have those reviewed, preferably by a certified elder law attorney who can tell you how that's going to play out, like what that's going to mean and what can be done about it, if anything. But those are absolutely going to need to be submitted and reviewed by Texas Health and Human Services. And so they could very well affect qualification.
And would that need to be done in Louisiana or here in Texas?
If she's applying for Texas Medicaid, then it's going to be here in Texas. Like everything is going to be a matter of here in Texas. Just because she has property in another state, that's just an asset that she has.
Okay.
If she's living in Louisiana, then you need to be talking to a certified elder law attorney in Louisiana, because I can't even begin to tell you what their requirements are.
Right.
But she's living in Texas, and so that property you will have to deal with in some way.
Thank you.
You're welcome. My husband has AD and within a few years will need institutionalization. I'm 12 years younger at 65 and still plan to keep on working, running our 2 companies. Will my earning income be an issue? Your income as the well spouse is not attributed to your spouse who needs institutionalization. Okay, so I know this is complicated and I know it's hard to keep straight. Assets are counted together. Income is counted separately. So your income, if you're still working and you're still making income, none of that income is going to be attributed to your husband. You have businesses, those are assets, those might, like there's some, we might need there might need to be a little bit of explanation done with that, with those businesses. But your income, whatever you are making, should not affect him at all. It's only the assets together that affect the spouse. Income is separate. Please share names of insurance companies that are still selling long-term care insurance. A lot of companies sell long-term care insurance. I know a lot of financial advisors sell long-term care insurance. That list is enormous. I have contacts at like Morgan Stanley and where else? A few that do that. Really, you just have to contact any of them and they'll tell you, like if you have insurance agencies. Elder care managers, I work with a couple. Email me offline and I'll send you a list with some contact information if you want it for elder care managers. What state in the US has the best rating care for nursing homes with Medicaid beds? I have no idea. I have no idea which state, and I don't even know that it's necessarily state by state. I think that it's, more city by city, county by county. But I don't know which state has the best rating for nursing homes with Medicaid beds. Some states Medicaid programs pay for things like assisted living, so they don't have as many people in Medicaid beds in nursing homes because they're in places like family care homes or assisted living facilities. So every state's going to be different in terms of how they approach it. Do they keep you on the list for another year? Yes. If your name comes up on the Star Plus Waiver interest list and you say, no, I'm not ready, but keep me on the list, then they'll keep you on the list till your name comes up again. Real estate assets owned, if they're owned within a corporation or an LLC, will they be counted? That is going to depend. That is really going to depend on a couple of different factors in terms of the LLC and what the business purpose of it is, and if it's still doing a business. If it's just a pass-through kind of thing, yeah, I hesitate to make any kind of qualified answer without looking at the situation on that one. All right, are there any other questions? Like I said, I know this is really complex, and I don't mean to make it more complicated than it is. I just wanted to kind of show an example of like how we go through things to figure out what's an asset, which is an asset, which is income, what's a countable asset, what's a non-countable asset. Can we move some income from the spouse going into the facility to the spouse at home? Can we expand how much a spouse gets to keep? It depends, right? The Star Plus waiver rules for income is actually a little different from what we talked about on here. And so every aspect of this is going to need its own analysis to figure out what is going to be what's going to be needed to assist in qualification, to allow it to maintain qualification or have qualification. There is nothing simple about Medicaid qualification. There's no easy answer. And the internet, again, is not your friend. It's not going to be sufficient. For example, if you're in a situation, if you have a spousal situation and there is $98,000 in cash and you just spend it on qualifying things, but there was a way to instead transfer those assets back to the spouse at home, then you haven't necessarily done yourselves any favors by just spending it all, right? You've qualified them, but there may have been a way to transfer those assets back to the spouse. And so if that's the case, then maybe you should explore that. Like maybe that's worth looking at. These are difficult scenarios, and they are not meant to be easy to walk through. They're good rules. There are good rules that we can use to help people 100%. But they are opaque and varied, and it is not something that just anybody can look at and say, oh, well, there's the right answer. There's no such thing as the right answer. There's just the best answer under the circumstances in your case. Other questions? Not to leave it on such a bleak note. Oh, good. Denise says that this has helped sort through some advice that they've received from friends. I'm glad. I'm so glad, because friends mean well, and they think they know, because they may have gone through something that feels similar to them. But it may not actually be similar. And so it's really good to talk to somebody about what planning scenarios are going to be the best for you. The good news is that we have techniques, we have tools that we can use. You're not alone. You don't have to be adrift. You don't have to try to sort it out on your own. We have tools, we have things available to us. We just have to talk it out. We just have to work it out, talk it out, and figure out what's going to be the best thing for you. My slides are available. Ariel just posted them in the chat, and I know that she'll send them out via email to those who came in. If anybody has any questions more specific to their circumstances, contact my office or another elder law attorney. This is for everybody. If you're not in Houston, if you're in a different area and you want a recommendation for an attorney in a different area, go to NAELA.org. That's the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys, NAELA.org. You can put in your zip code, and they will give you a list of local attorneys to you to help. If you're trying to help somebody in a different state, you can put in their zip code. It's a national organization. You can put in their zip code, and they will, and you can find attorneys who are members of the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. And so they do practice in elder law, and you can see whether or not they're certified elder law attorneys when you look them up, to find somebody to help in the area or to ask questions of in the area that you're looking for.
Thank you so much, Angela. This has been great. I hope everybody has enjoyed the presentation as much as I have. We will be sending out the recording as well as the slides, but feel free to get the handout in the chat as well. So,
Yes.
about 15 more minutes.
Contact my office. Sorry,
Yes.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say we have about 15 minutes left. So if we can end early, or if somebody has another question, please feel free. Now is the time.
Lily is asking if she can bring documents to me just to review without starting over from scratch. That's hard, just because if I take time to review everything, I have to charge for that time. Now, I don't mind doing that. And if everything's fine, I'll let you know that it's all fine. Or that if I see anything unusual, I'll let you know. But it's coming in after another attorney. I can't assume their work. No attorney should assume that the work of an attorney that came before them did everything exactly the way that they would. And as a friend of mine once said, it's not that your previous attorney was wrong, it's that I'm more right, right? And so sometimes there's nothing necessarily wrong, I would just have done it differently. And so that's a difficult question to answer, as far as, if you're not satisfied with something that a previous attorney has done, then you should talk to them about that. If you want to seek a second opinion, that is certainly something that you are welcome to do. like I said, the first attorney may have done nothing at all that is in any way wrong or anything. It's just, it may have been something that I would have done differently or another attorney would have done differently. We don't all agree on everything every time. So that's my short and long answer to that. Do elder care attorneys also handle guardianship? Some do. It depends. I have definitely done guardianships in the past. I don't do them as much anymore for elders. I will do guardianships for adults with special needs. But I do have a ton of references for people who do guardianships. That is an area that some elder law attorneys do. Not strictly elder law. Some people just practice in guardianships and they don't do anything at all with elder law. Generally speaking, they just do guardianships. So it depends on the kind of guardianship you're looking for and what's the circumstances surrounding it. Guardianships are hard. They're very, very hard. Do I accept Zoom meetings or do you have to meet me in person? I will do whatever you're most comfortable with. I have no problem having Zoom meetings. As a matter of fact, when you schedule with me, it's a calendar invite. And when you click the time, it'll ask you if you would prefer to meet via Zoom or if you would prefer to meet in my office. And then you can check which one works best for you. And that's how it goes up on my calendar. And so if it comes up on my calendar as a Zoom meeting, I will be sitting here ready to go when you are. If it comes up on my calendar as an in-person meeting, then I will be ready in my office to greet you and say hi. So I go on the comfort level and preference of my clients. That's true for masking too. If you would prefer for me to wear a mask in the office, if you want to wear a mask in the office, then we will do that. If you're comfortable without, then we will do that. Everyone in my office is vaccinated and boosted and the whole shebang. And so I try to meet the comfort levels of my clients. Is it wise to start gathering all those bank records now and have on record, or should we count on appealing to the bank for the time we start the process? Depends on where you're at. If you're looking down the road and you see that you're probably going to end up needing to apply in the next 6 months, maybe start keeping those bank records. If you're not sure, then keep them, but understand that if you do have to go back to the bank, because when you apply, you only have to give them 3 months. But if you're in a circumstance where you're not entirely sure what's been going on with the finances, then you really need to review 5 years because you need to make sure that you've caught every possible transfer that might be considered a gift. You don't want to leave that to chance. So collecting the bank records, when is a good time to do that, depends on what your timetable is for application. I know I have clients now that I started talking to last year. We made a plan to start for the application to be ready to go on July 1st. And so they sent me 5 years of bank records last month, right? So that I can start going through them and make sure that we're ready to go and there's nothing that I have to deal with. Remind us again on limits of spousal gifts. So a spouse can transfer anything to another spouse without issue, but I don't think that's the question that you're asking. Yeah, I'm sorry. There's not so much limits on spousal gifts, or do you, right? If you're talking about gifts that were given by a married couple for like a wedding present for a child or grandchild or something, those we deal with in the application because if you gifted for a purpose exclusive of Medicaid qualification, then it's not necessarily going to be penalized. But that's one of those like complex conversations that we have to have about what money is missing, where and how. So when it comes to gifts, it's very specific to the circumstances as to how that gift is going to be viewed.
Ms. Odinsky,
Yes.
Vijay Kane.
Hi.
First, let me compliment you on all three beautiful presentations. I love the clarity with which you present all the facts and figures, and I loved your slides. And as I mentioned before, I'm a financial advisor, so I also do these things, but from different angles. And one point that I wanted to make was long-term care. This used to be quite affordable many, many years ago. And the number of companies that are offering it now has gone down by about 80%. Most insurance companies unknowingly misprice the products, and slowly and surely they are sort of fading away. The affordable alternative to these things is life insurance policies that have chronic and critical illness features on them. And they are underwritten based on underwriting standards for life insurance, much, much easier to qualify for. If today somebody tries to apply for long-term care, if they have a little diabetes, they will be declined. So it's great to talk about in theory, but in practice, they just quite don't work. I mean, we advisors ourselves don't buy those policies anymore. So I just wanted to kind of make that point.
Oh, and that's why having a financial advisor on your team is so important. So when I talk about long-term care insurance, I'm not talking about like your strict long-term care policies. And forgive me if I'm using the wrong terms. I mean the hybrid policies too, like the life insurance policies with the long-term care riders.
Yeah.
I mean any kind of insurance policy that is going to pay for future long-term care. So that's when I say long-term care insurance, that's what I mean. But that's why it's really important that you talk to a financial advisor, that you have a financial advisor and that you talk to them and you let them know that you're concerned about paying for your long-term care and get advice like Vijay is giving us about the different kinds of products that are out there and what the qualification requirements are going to be for different products and how much are they going to be and whether or not there's going to be a death benefit and how is it going to pay out and what does it pay for. All of those considerations have to come into play. And that is absolutely why on that slide, when I talked about gathering your team, financial advisor is right up there. Number one, because they're the person that's going to help you most figure out the best way to put your money in the right spots early on to take care of your long-term care needs.
Great. I'll reach out to you privately later.
Okay.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of questions, a lot of personal. I know a lot of people have specific situations that they that they're wondering about, and unfortunately I can't get into specific sort of legal advice in a presentation like this, but I hope I've answered some of your questions at least enough to let you know that this is as complicated as it seems and feels, but we have answers. Like answers are out there and there are people there who want to help you. You don't go into this by accident. People who are elder law attorneys are here because we want to help families that are in this kind of need. And so, you know, my colleagues are fantastic. It's the only area of law I've known about where everyone is so incredibly generous and helpful. And I have nothing but amazing things to say about my colleagues in the elder law bar. And so I'm happy to help anybody kind of navigate from wherever you happen to be. And with that, I suppose I will say goodbye. This has been super fun. Thank you all for coming to my 3-part series This ends it. I hope to do it again sometime. I think that being able to have this on Zoom allowed a lot more people to join us, but I enjoy doing these in person as well. So hopefully we'll be able to do that soon again. Ariel, I will leave the rest to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Angela. And thank you all for joining. If you need anything, any additional resources, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help you. And I will be sending out the recording and the slides on tomorrow. So thank you all so much for joining. Y'all enjoy the rest of your day. It's a little rainy, but looks like it's clearing up a little bit. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.